Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here, coming to you live. And I'm going to take your questions this morning, any questions you have. I'll try and keep up this morning. I normally say that, and I normally don't do a great job of keeping up with the questions, but I'll try. Now, if you do ask a question, but I can't answer it for whatever reason, I can't get to it, then please do go and ask your question on my blog, which is brittsimonsays.com. brittsimonsays.com. People have asked me in the past why I call myself that, or I always thought it would be pretty obvious when I started the channel, etc. I'm British, and my name is Simon, so I am Brit Simon. I'm not called Brittany. Some of you want to call me Brittany, and yeah, I'm British and I'm Simon. Anyway, good morning to you all. Let's take some questions. Cielo, good morning. How complicated, realistic is it to transfer the interview between embassies when already scheduled? Any tips? Many thanks. Good question. This is actually what is technically called a transfer. And I do think the naming convention of what we're trying to do is important here. So in your case, you're talking about a transfer. This is not a reassignment before you've been scheduled. In this situation, you're describing you've been scheduled at Embassy A, and now you want to move to Embassy B. It may be because Embassy B was always the embassy you wanted to be scheduled at, but that embassy is backlogged, and you weren't going to get scheduled there. And so what some wise people have done is they've listened to my comments, and some people think this is cheating, but this isn't cheating at all. They've listened to my comments and they've transferred their case before, they've reassigned their case before they were scheduled, and then transfer their case after they're scheduled, right? So they reassign themselves to Embassy A, which the best way to do that is through changing your address in the DS-260, actually moving to the country where you want to be scheduled, right? So you achieve the move. You get reassigned to Embassy A, and now you want to move back to Embassy B. Or you just want to move to Embassy B because you've moved there or whatever. It doesn't have to be that tricky thing I mentioned. Okay, so the process is simply this. You contact Embassy B, and the embassy you want to be assigned to, transferred to, and you ask them if they will take your case, right? You say that you've been scheduled at Embassy A, and you want to interview at Embassy B. You may want to provide the reason. You just explain you're going to be there, or you live there, or whatever is the reason, in a brief email. Very, very simple email. Please don't do flowery, long, complicated emails. It's bullshit. Nobody wants to read your long life story, right? They just want you to get to the point. And so you don't have to do all this fancy stuff of good morning, very welcome, thank you, sir. Just keep it simple, to the point, right? You ask Embassy B, can you take the case? And if they say yes, their procedure is that they would contact Embassy A on your behalf and ask the case to be moved. However, if I were you, I would also contact Embassy A, and I would oversee the move. I would say to Embassy A, Embassy B have agreed to take my case, please make sure you transfer the case, etc. And that's it. That's as much as it is. Now, KCC is not involved in that process. You have to understand, and a lot of you get confused, before you're scheduled, the embassy knows nothing about you, literally nothing about you, okay, before you're scheduled. Once you're scheduled, KCC don't want to do anything about your case, right? KCC own your case, control your case, know everything about your case, up until the point that they've scheduled you. And then they've passed that responsibility to an embassy. From that point forward, those embassies, Embassy A and Embassy B, only they are involved in a transfer. So you no longer speak to KCC, okay? Speaking to an embassy before you've been scheduled is a waste of everybody's time, okay? It doesn't help at all. There's only a couple of very exceptional circumstances where you would ever contact an embassy where you have not been scheduled. And that basically boils down to sort of begging them to take your case because you happen to be physically present in the area. But anyway, that's the process. No real tips. The only thing I would say is that if you were scheduled on, let's say, I don't know, July the 20th in Embassy A, you're not going to guarantee yourself being scheduled on July the 20th in Embassy B. They don't have to keep the same date, right? And so there is a little bit of a risk, particularly towards the end of the year, that they won't have availability to schedule you. But in some cases, that is, that's a far better situation. Okay, that's it. That's it, Cielo. Okay, good morning from New York. Awesome. DV24 winner here, but still join every live. That's fantastic. Thank you, Maisie. Why visa bulletin is late? It's not late. I always crack up at these sort of comments. I say, I don't know how many times I've said this now, over the years, thousands of times. So maybe you've heard me say this before. The visa bulletin is normally out between the 8th and the 15th of the month. So today is the 13th of the month, and you're telling me it's late. Why are you telling me it's late when I've told you already between the 8th and the 15th of the month is when it's due? Okay. Now, there have been some times when the visa bulletin has genuinely been late. It's been after the 15th of the month, but that's pretty rare. It doesn't happen all the time. It happens maybe, once every year, once every couple of years even. I can't remember the last time it happened. So generally speaking, it's between the 8th and the 15th. So join in with me, Mohammed. Is the visa bulletin late? No, the visa bulletin is not late because it's the 13th, and 13th is less than 15. Oh, God. Why? Evans, when will VB be out? Secondly, any possibilities of Nairobi resuming? Okay, when will the VB be out? Just to explain that. Secondly, any possibilities of Nairobi resuming? There is a possibility. I just don't know if that's going to happen as a fact. Beirut, for example, has not scheduled a case for I don't know how long, long time, and they just scheduled some cases this last week. So yeah, embassies can do what they want. They can stop scheduling DV lottery cases. They can restart. They can do whatever they want. I have no information, Evans, about one way or the other, right? So I hope they take some. I can tell you this: without their additional capacity, Africa is going to be very, very underfilled. Africa is really shortfalling from the quota. There's no way. In fact, there's no way that the global quota can be met at the moment. They're already so far behind. They've really screwed this up. They were ahead of visa issuances, etc. They were ahead of where they had to be. They only had to do a few reasonable months of visa bulletin movement and scheduling, and they completely fluffed it up. So yeah, I don't know. When will the VB be out? Mohammed just talked about it. How is Nairobi performance? Well, Nairobi performance has not been good. They scheduled 421 cases in November of last year, 4 November interviews of last year, and then they've done nothing since. So Nairobi embassy performance clearly for DV25 has been awful. For DV24, DV23, it was brilliant. It's so sad to see that happen when you assume that they will obviously behave like they've behaved before, and inexplicably they just stop scheduling cases. They didn't send out a note saying why they'd done it, why they were not scheduling any interviews. They haven't communicated anything. Awful. I hate that they've done that. Okay. Prediction for final cutoff for Oceania DV 2025. Nadeem, I'm not going to do final predictions. I've already said over the last few weeks that the final visa bulletins, and I'll say this for all regions, the final visa bulletins are a wild guess right now. Mathematically, there should be some movement, right? All the regions, probably with the exception of Oceania and South America, the 3 big regions, I'll say then, are significantly behind where they should be mathematically in order to get us to the quota. Therefore, mathematically, there should be an increase in the visa bulletin numbers, at least for the 3 big regions, and it should be fairly significant, right? Now, because they've made this a question of capacity for the final month, they've done such a bad job in the last 3 or 4 months of scheduling that they've now made it that the capacity is an issue, not just the mathematical calculation. The capacity within the system, within the 3 big regions, is not sufficient in order to meet the to meet the global quota. That means there will be wasted visas. And in a situation where there are wasted visas, a couple of things can happen. Number one, visas can be transferred from one region to another region to allow that second region to sort of eat from the plate of the bigger region or the other region that is underusing their visas, right? And number two, we've observed in recent years that KCC tends to try and do everything they can at the very last minute to push the capacity where it can be found. Now, the capacity for certain embassies is pretty much set. There are some embassies that take, let's say, 50 cases per month. I'm just using an example. They take 50 cases per month or 100 cases per month. In an embassy like that, it's quite difficult to see them increase their capacity to 200 cases, 300 cases, right? Suddenly out of the blue, an embassy that has a regular capacity every month and fills that capacity every month, but gets close to the visa bulletin, so it isn't really backlogged. That sort of embassy tends to not have additional spare capacity just lying around, right? Then we have other embassies tend to be the smaller embassies, which are very sporadic. They don't even have cases scheduled every single month. They have 1, 2, 3 interviews in 1 month, and then next month they have nothing, and that's fine. Well, okay, we don't know what their capacity is because they're getting so few actual appointments because there's so few people assigned to that embassy that we don't know their true capacity, right? And it's only at the last minute when we see what I call a Hail Mary, which is a massive increase, an inappropriate increase in the last visa bulletin, perhaps putting some regions current and that sort of thing. It's only then when we see those little embassies suddenly scheduled like 20 cases or something, and you might think, okay, that's not very many cases, but that represents a 500 or 600% increase from where they're normally at, right? So the capacity in the system-wide is all of the embassies within a region typically, or within who take those cases from various reasons. Thank you, Annie. So the capacity can be very elastic in those smaller embassies, and that actually helps. So a Hail Mary, where let's say mathematically, let's just give some numbers to this, right? Let's take the case of Europe. Europe is currently at 22K. Mathematically, I can totally make the case that they should push the number to 29, 30,000, about that. Mathematically, they should definitely do that, right? Which, funnily enough, is right into my my estimate range that I made back in January, right? All of the regions, by the way, are exactly poised mathematically to be within. I mean, this is probably my most accurate year ever mathematically in terms of predictions. They're all poised at the right point. You can see the sense of the mathematical predictions I made back in January. You can see those like in the numbers right now. But anyway, let's say Europe, therefore goes to 29,100, right? Just picking that number randomly. Let's say they go to 29,100, right? Mathematically, that is possible. That increase of 7,100 visa bulletin numbers is mathematically possible because there's enough visas ready to be issued for that group within that number range, right? It's mathematically possible, particularly when you take into account some of the travel ban impacts, etc. But anyway, that number is certainly possible, right? Now, a Hail Mary would be putting the number to 40,000, right? 35,000, something like that, where you can't justify that from a mathematical calculation point of view, but it could happen. That's what happened last year. And we had a Hail Mary the year before that. Now, would that help everyone? No, it wouldn't really help everyone, but it would help some of those people at those very little embassies. It would also help adjustment of status cases. But if you're at a big embassy that has a sort of fairly static and an absolutely regular, number of cases every month, and every month they fill up, then it's not going to help you, right? It's that high case number that's mathematically improbable or unlikely to happen mathematically. When that happens because of a Hail Mary, your embassy, if you're in a big embassy with lots of cases every month, they're probably not going to get there. Okay, so that's a little bit of the unfairness, but some of you have already understood and know that and have been preparing for that. So there you go. So coming right back to Nadim's question, let me put that in the perspective of Oceania. Africa is underfilling, right? For sure. It just can't fill. It's just impossible now. There's just nowhere near enough cases. And even if every embassy comes online and takes all the capacity, there's no way they can take it. Oceania is underfilling. Sorry, not Oceania. Asia is underfilling, right? We've got significant impacts from the travel ban, which means that a lot of the people that are currently in 221G have been banned. And they're not going anywhere. They're not going to get their visas, right? There's a lot of Iranians, Yemenis, Afghans, impacted. That's thousands of cases. And all of those people, they're not going anywhere, right? So because of that, and because they're still scheduling banned people, because you're entitled to have an interview even if you're banned, right? You're not going to get your visa, but you're entitled to interview if you're silly enough to turn up for it. Because of that, Asia is underfilling. Now, the unused visas from Africa will have been available to Asia and to Europe and Oceania and South America. The unused visas from Asia are then also available for redistribution in Europe and Oceania and South America, right? Europe is not able to eat all of those visas, right? Because again of the capacity problem, right? Which means that Oceania and South America could eat from that plate and have more visas made available to them. So if we see a broad Hail Mary on every region, including South America and Oceania, it's much more possible that some of the good embassies in Oceania, for example, or South America, sort of do a little bit more, and that can have quite a dramatic impact on the region as a whole. Okay, so my prediction for Oceania, I actually posted last October, and I stick by it. We shouldn't see numbers above 2,000 mathematically, but because of a Hail Mary, if a Hail Mary comes to the other regions, and because even with a Hail Mary, there's not going to be all the visas used up, it cannot possibly happen that we can use up all the visas. There will be spare visas, and so they could Hail Mary Oceania and South America too, even though mathematically it's not justified. Okay, long description there to answer a simple question, but I'm hoping you understand better the perspective, right? This sort of redistribution of visas concept is pretty important, but frankly, you're not even going to see it like that because of capacity. It's not really going to be a redistribution as such. Perhaps you'll see that in South America and Oceania, but that would be about it. Europe, Asia, and Africa, they're going to struggle to hit their own caps, let alone eating additional. Just not possible for capacity reasons. Congratulations, KCC, you managed to fuck it up. You snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, right? You literally had it there. The government, I mean, it's not just KCC, it's visa office, and in addition, there's got to be some impact from KCC. There's got to be some better influence from KCC. I'll be discussing this with Director McIntyre fairly soon in the lawsuit that I've just recently filed. Why do they manage to fuck it up so badly? You know, I don't understand. It's like, you know. Now, let me just say, all of that I just said about the Hail Mary and everything else, that assumes that the government gives a damn about trying to issue as many visas as possible. And I don't know for a fact that they give a damn. They might say, we're not bothered. We'll waste some visas. We don't care. Trump doesn't want new immigrants anyway. We're fine. We don't have to do that. We'll just do a small increase on the visa bulletin, and we'll waste a bunch of visas. We don't care. Less work for us. Nobody will tell us off, right? They could say that. Okay, so I can't be sure that we're going to get a Hail Mary. So my number rate, my expectation for numbers is everything from almost nothing to a Hail Mary like current for Africa and all this chaos, and anything in between. I mean, I literally have no idea what's going to happen next. I have no idea. Okay, I know what could happen, but I don't know what will happen. I'm as I'm as clueless as anyone else. And anyone who says they do know, they're just bullshitting. Nobody knows. So there you go. Lucky boy, my embassy got rescheduled. My interview, got a new passport for unbanned country with same day profile of old passport. Same day profile. Oh God, I can't. Lucky boy, I can't. You're all caps. You're not making sense. I can't. Tell us about something about Nairobi with Snarkdown. Why did it take so long to release the new VB? Possible reason. Also, is the new bill applied to DV25 like AOS fees? Mevra, we're not late in the VB, as I've already covered. The new bill did not increase fees for DV lottery directly. The ones that I was concerned about was the $250 fee to enter the lottery and $400 to fill out the DS260. I have to admit, I know that some fees actually did get included in the bill, but not the ones related to DV lottery specifically. But I have to admit, now you're asking, I don't know whether there's a new fee for adjustment of status. So forgive me. I was happy to see the stuff I thought about immediately taken out, and that's all I looked into. I'll look it up and ask the question on my blog, and I'll answer it properly. Okay. Why is the visa bulletin not published yet? Because it's not the 15th. Ethiopia 53K from Kenya transfer. What is the outcome? I don't know, Edwin. How do you think EU visa bulletin for DV25? Just talked about it. Is any hopeful reason that they take so long, this VB? Yeah. This is what people do. People assume when we have a late visa bulletin, it's not late, but anyway, when we have a late visa bulletin, people assume that it's all sorts of behind the scenes effort to improve things. Oh, that means they must be working extra hard to increase the numbers to make sure they push the visa bulletin as much as possible. Or other people take a more negative view. Oh, that means President Trump has gone over to the visa office and personally adjusted the PDF document to reduce the numbers, because Trump doesn't like immigrants. It's like, you're all dreamers. It's like, you're dreamers. None of these things happen. And the visa bulletin isn't just about DV lottery. In fact, the visa bulletin is 95% of it is concerned with 95% of the immigration that goes on in this country. 5% of the immigration that goes on in this country is to do with DV lottery. So you guys think sometimes, like Mehdi thinks, that there is some special process going on for DV lottery that is delaying them for releasing the visa bulletin, even though it's not delayed, because they're doing something special for DV lottery. Nobody gives a shit, Mehdi. They don't care. It's not important. Nobody gives a shit, right, about DV lottery. It's 5%. There's 1 million immigrants every year, and 50,000 of those are from DV lottery. Okay, the numbers are more like 1.2, 1.3 million in some years, right? So DV lottery is the tail, and the tail isn't wagging the dog. Okay, we're just a little part of the visa bulletin. We're just a little part of the immigration budget overall. We're not wagging the dog. We're just the tail. Okay. They're not basing this whole thing, and it's not delayed at all. But if it were to be delayed, it's not because of DV lottery, I promise you. Edmund says, I'm a star. So I must be a star. Thank you, Edmund. Any hope for those of us in Abu Dhabi? I don't know. Don't know what Abu Dhabi are going to do. One of the embassies that drives me nuts, because they are so good normally, and they've been strange. And they've been strange for a little while, so I don't know why. Hi Simon, my case number AS 15,000 2025. What do you think about number? It's a lovely round number. AS 15,000. It's a lovely round number. It's not like 10,000, which is also a round number. It's not like 20,000. That's a round number too. It's 15,000. It's right in the middle. I like that. I like that it's in the middle between 10 and 20. That's what I think about your number. Hello, Mr. Brit Simon. Hanging in till 30th September. Playing for Cotonou Benin to take some cases after next VB. Yeah, good luck. Fingers crossed. You're at a good case number, right? So you could have a chance. How is the Freetown Embassy performance? They just took some cases. I think they took 30 cases, I want to say, this last week, which is good. So there were about 120 cases scheduled this last week, which is late. Normally when we see the visa bulletin, which normally comes between the 8th and the 15th, I may have mentioned that before. But if it comes around about the 8th, etc., we traditionally assume that that's the end of scheduling for the previous month, right? Now, in reality, we don't actually know that to be the case 100%. There is a possibility that after the visa bulletin comes out, there are still a few cases being scheduled for the previous month. We actually wouldn't know that because we don't see the interview dates when we see the SEAC data. So it's possible that this always happens. But the delay in the visa bulletin not being issued last week, it could have been issued as early as Tuesday of last week. But that, because it wasn't issued Tuesday to Wednesday last week, that revealed some additional 2NLs that were sent. And obviously those 2NLs are for last month's numbers. So that demonstrates, which is something I've always said, that the 2NLs come immediately after the visa bulletin is sent out. It comes from that period until roughly the end of the month, right? And sometimes a few days into the following month. And we've just seen proof of that. They've proven that, okay? Mr. Brett, what are your expectations for the last visa bulletin? Yeah, I mean, you're clearly going to go current, right? 54K AF. As long as you're not in an accept country, you'll be current. Your chances of scheduling depend on which embassy you're at, okay? Is there any update about DV21? Wow, that's an old one. DV 2020 and DV 2021 finished, 100% finished. There are no further appeals being suggested, being filed. There's nothing that's going on. That DV21 is dead. It's over. It's done with, right? We got advantage from the big lawsuits in DV 2020. I just want to remind people we got an incredible win in DV 2020 on September 4th of 2020. Judge Amit Mehta told the government they had to do their freaking job. And between September 4th and September 30th of 2020, we had 7,000 people scheduled and issued. I think 6,000 were issued in that hectic 3-week period. It was amazing. We then, Judge Amit Mehta also said he wanted to hold open a number of visas, 9,095 visas. He held open for issuance after the end of the year. That piece, the visa issuance after the end of the year, was killed on appeal. The government appealed that decision, and eventually, after about 18 months or so, the appeals court came back and said that piece of the relief that we were given, that reserving the 9,095 visas, he said that wouldn't go ahead. Right, the appeals court sort of stamped on that and said no to that. The government won on that piece only. And the lawyers collectively decided there would be no further appeals of that. They could have appealed, they could have tried to go to the Supreme Court, but honestly, it was a very definitive judgment. And the Gomez case in particular, it had been very hard fought. It must have cost a small fortune to handle that case. It was mainly fought on a pro bono basis. Curtis Morrison and others had paid for cases related to that. And so there was quite a bit of money invested by private lawsuits as well as the pro bono lawsuits. Huge legal undertaking. And I shudder to think what the eventual bill would have been if someone was paying for all of that. It would have been measured in the millions of dollars for sure. So, you know, all of that was, I wouldn't say it's for nothing at all, because it actually did have a very important impact. But we didn't quite get the win at the end that we really wanted. We just got the wins prior to September 30th. In DV21, the lawsuits were also impactful. We were able to overturn some of the horrific stuff that went on in that year. And, you know, that was beneficial. And then in DV22, 23, the government overissued visas, which was clearly the first time they'd ever done it. And it was clearly an attempt or a reaction at being sued in DV21 and 20. They went further. So the impacts of those lawsuits, DV20 and 21 lawsuits, have been continuing for some time. Many thousands of people have benefited from those lawsuits. So I'm incredibly grateful that we actually were able to find lawyers prepared to fight that fight. So thank goodness for that. Anyway, no other update apart from that. It really is the end. That's why I gave a little bit of an explanation there for historical reasons. You know, it's time we move on from that. Okay, Hussein? Hi, Simon. Is there hope for the number AF33K Nairobi Embassy before August, or what happened at Kenya Embassy? I don't know, Lynn. You'll have to wait and see. Your number is obviously current. It just depends whether Nairobi is going to schedule cases or not. I don't know, unfortunately. If the travel ban countries get denied at the embassy, does it mean that regions that are not impacted by the travel ban get higher chance of getting selected within the next DV lottery? No. So, no, it doesn't work like that. So 1 year, an underfilling from 1 year in this region has no impact on the next year. The years are completely distinct. The formula that calculates the quotas, for example, the split of the visa quota between all the regions, that is a formula that's based on, on population and immigration flow, numbers of people already moving into the country, immigrating to the US from various regions, right? That formula is not affected by what happened previous year. So the quota is not affected. The reaction of the embassies is not affected by 1 year they do this, next year they do that. It's not affected. There's no impacts from 1 year to the next. Okay, no, it doesn't work like that. And the travel ban doesn't work like that. Okay. DV25 AF78K, what is my chance? You have some chance because of the Hail Mary situation. Mathematically, you should have no chance. There's no chance. But because of the Hail Mary situation, you might get current. Then it becomes a matter of which embassy are you at. Is your embassy able to schedule that many cases? Remember, if your embassy has, let's say they take 10 cases per 1,000 case numbers, right? And they're currently at 50,000, and then you want them to get to 78,000. Your embassy, therefore, has to be able to move, and schedule 10 times 28, right? 280 cases. So if they only have capacity for 30 cases per month or 50 cases per month, they can't handle 280 cases. So if you're, with such a big jump, it's not every embassy that will be able to get to your number anyway. Okay. So obviously, as you should have known from day one, the higher your case number, the greater your risk. That is how the process is supposed to work. They know that that's what it means. That's how it's supposed to work. That's actually even how the law is written. Okay. Lower case numbers get preference in this process. Okay. Hi, Simon. Does police clearance certificate from Germany require apostle? Read the instructions for Germany, right? In terms of the police clearance certificate, read the instructions in the reciprocity page for Germany, and then read the instructions for your embassy. Okay, I don't know which embassy you're at, and I don't know the documentation standards for every country in the world. But I know exactly where I could find that information on any country and any embassy I'm going to go and interview at, which is why I tell you to go read the fucking instructions rather than ask me. I'm serious. You guys need to hear this. You need to read the instructions. The reciprocity page is where you find out how you obtain documents from any country where you might need them. That's what happens on the reciprocity page. And it's linked from the original documents. The original instructions, right? Or you can just Google it. You can Google reciprocity page and hey presto, the thing comes up. Then the embassy puts out their own specific instructions for people going there, right? So if you're gonna be interviewed at Sydney Embassy, you go on the instructions and you look up any instructions for Sydney Embassy. That's not in the reciprocity page. That's in the embassy's specific instructions. So there are 3 instructions you need to know. When you are a winner in this process, you're immediately directed to go read the instructions. There's 1 page of instructions. And you can Google that page by saying, if you are selected. Literally, you type in that words, if you are selected. And that's the first hit you'll get in any Google search. That's the main set of instructions. And in that main set of instructions is a step-by-step, process-by-process, here's what you do, here's when you get your documents together and so on, right? It's all there. And in there, it also links to the embassy-specific instructions, and it has a helpful link to the reciprocity page. So everything you need to know is there, okay? So Sujan, asking me a country-specific question like that is really kind of frustrating because you need to go read the instructions. Okay, I won't swear again, but you do need to do that. Hello, Simon. Can you tell me AS22K, any chances? And I want to change my host address later if I got my visa approved. Is it possible for me to do that? Yeah. Okay. So any chances? You didn't tell me the year, but I'm going to assume it's DV25. There's a chance that you go current. It would obviously be a big increase and basically a doubling of today's numbers. So it would be a big increase. That's in the Hail Mary range, frankly. You need a Hail Mary. As well as a Hail Mary, you would need to be at an embassy that can handle that capacity. So I don't know whether you're going to get a chance, even if you become current. If you become current, there's no guarantee that you're going to get an interview, okay? If you get an interview and you want to change your host, you can update that address, the American address that you've given in the DS260. You can do that at the interview, which is what I recommend, or as a final chance, you can update that as you're entering the country at the port of entry, right? The port of entry is the arrival airport, the first airport you go through where you're processed by immigration, okay? So you can do it there. That's your final chance. Don't leave it for later than that, okay? Nairobi Embassy messed up in DV 2023 case 39K. I don't know what that means. Nairobi. Roberto, good morning. Hopefully the wait will be worth it. Roberto, you're going to be fine. I know you are going to be forming a law firm fairly soon. Roberto and Simon Legal Enterprises. But yeah, you can definitely make it. Roberto and Simon, I'll take the second billing there. I don't mind, since you're the lawyer. Most people will lose out. Yes, Francis, that's true. Most people do lose out in a year when you get 140,000 people selected for 52,000 visas. It is pretty obvious that most people are going to lose out. Yep. Where does Asia last case number stop, sir? Is it? I don't know. How is Qatar embassy performing? What is the highest case number they have scheduled for interviews? Can I be bothered? After all this time on, pretty much one of the last chances of the year, do I want to show this? I guess I can. Right, so present, share screen, entire screen. I love that I talk through this. Okay. This is the dvcharts.zarthisius.xyz website /SEAC FY25 HTML, right? Somebody said the other day they couldn't read the address. So let me make that big. Let me get rid of, yeah. There we go. All right. So can you read this at the top? I hope you can. And then you scroll down and you can type in there Qatar. Okay. And we can see that they have scheduled cases right up to about 45,000 or so. 46,000, right? If you want a precise number, you can come down here, right? You can search for that, right? And you can search for Doha. Okay, and you can you can change the order of these to see, by region, what is the highest number that they've got. So that's AS there, AF. We've got AF 45159. It's amazing. It's amazing how this website works, right? You can get any information. You can appear to be an expert, even though you've got no idea. And it's like so easy. Thank you to Zarthisius to make this data available for us. If you didn't want to look at it that way, you have all of these CSV files, which are all the dates through the year, right? Or you can download the CSV file from this link at the top, or you can go and get the now really clearly shown case numbers organized into 1,000 blocks. You can download that there. There is so much freaking data and information for you. You can see pictures of this. You can see the data. You can download the data and you can do your own stuff. It's all color coded. It's like what on earth are you people? Honestly, you're so lucky. I went through this process in DV 2014. There was no information available to people at that point, right? That was from 2013. I was involved in this. Actually, earlier than that, because I applied the previous year and I learned all about it then. But there was no information. There was no Zarthisius website in those days, because Zarthisius hadn't even been made a winner yet. He was a winner in 2017, I think, 2018, 2017, I think. And so, you guys are very, very lucky. But some of you look at this data and you understand what's going on, and some of you just don't. And I don't understand why, really. But oh well. Please use that website. It's brilliant, and it's got so much data. You've got no excuse to not know things. And he even gives you a link to my blog. Look at that. Oh, and a time slice as well. Some of you don't understand this. There's a time slice thing. You can go back in time. See this picture? This picture is changing, right? This picture is changing. You can get any date and say, how did the data look in March, for example, right? You can get any of these dates. It's published every Friday. So there's every Friday data is updated there. It's published every Friday. Every Friday, Zarthisius takes his Friday night and he sits down at a computer and he downloads the data by hand. It takes him ages, I'm sure. And then he puts the data here, all because of the goodness of his heart, while his wife and kids have to look after themselves. Paul Zarthisius' wife and kids, because he gives his Friday night to us every week, right? So, All right. Hi, Simon. Just hope the wait will be worth it. 58K. Good luck. M. Yasser says, hi, Britt. I am waiting for some documents to submit my 2026 DS and my case number 2800, and I expect my interview in October. Is there a deadline to fill the DS and how long it takes for processing? First of all, you will not get interviewed in October. And the reason I know that is because you've delayed it. So you've already caused a delay by your late submission of the DS260. So you can forget October. Even if you're current, it's not going to happen, right? You didn't have to wait for documents to be able to submit your DS260. They don't ask for documents in the DS260. You're not asked for documents before the interview. So I don't know why you waited because of your documents. If you wanted an interview in October, if that was important to you to get an early interview, you should have submitted your DS260. Now, because you are now going to submit your DS260 after you've heard those words, you're going to find that there's a backlog that your case won't be opened until they get to your case, right? So there is going to be a delay, and you probably won't be interviewed therefore until, I don't know, November, December, perhaps January. But you will be interviewed at some later point, but you've caused yourself a delay already. There is no real deadline to fill in the DS260, but I always say to people every single year, like once we get to May, you're already leaving it too late, right? And I think maybe I can make that a little bit clearer to people. I would not submit my DS260 personally. I would not submit my DS260 after the next year has started submitting their DS260s, because you're likely to get delayed, I think, by the overall processing. It's not necessarily that KCC will stop processing. It's just that if there's a bunch of, if you're a DV25 applicant and you chose to wait until, let's say, mid-May or the end of May, as I know of one case, to submit their DS260, a bunch of 2026 cases will have submitted their cases in front of you. KCC may separate that work, but if your case needs any further processing, if there's some sort of concern, then it is going to go in behind all those 2026 cases that are already going for further processing, right? So you will cause yourself a delay. Now, I know of at least 2 cases like that at the moment where they submitted in May and they're now finding they're panicking and they're stressed out because their cases are not processed yet. I hope they will get processed, but if they don't, and those people don't get scheduled, it'll be a frustrating thing, and it will be because they submitted their DS260 too late. So whilst there is no technical deadline, there is no finite day on which you must not submit after this point. There is no deadline like that. And we have seen in some years where a case has been submitted even in June or so, and they've been processed within a week. But there are other cases that need additional processing, and those ones tend to get delayed a little bit. And you never know whether your case is going to be one of those cases or not. So my recommendation is always, every year, and I've been saying this for 10 years, I treat May as being the last time when you should be submitting your DS260. And to be clear, once we're entering May, once we're May 1st and beyond, you're starting to play a dangerous game. Okay, I wouldn't recommend submitting later than that. Okay. Thanks for the update. You're welcome. Any possibility that Baghdad Embassy resume the issuing visa now that the schedule August interviews? I don't know. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. So they don't contact me. They don't. Strangely, I don't know why. Smail says, when the number of DV selectees for DV26 be published, do you think there are any chance for a second draw this year? Okay. The number of selectees, Smail, I saw an interesting message on my blog from a person called Micah. Are you Micah? It was like a question about will there be a second draw, and refers to the number of selectees being shared by the government, etc. So let me go into that. Hang on a second. Sorry. Where are we? Here. Let me make me big. Is there any chance of a second draw, and when will the 2026 numbers be published? Okay. So first of all, the 2026 selectee numbers are normally published in either the visa bulletin that's about to be published this coming week, or the next one, right? The next one would be called the September Visa Bulletin, and it'll be published in August. For the last 2 years, I think, it's been that Visa Bulletin that has the the New Year's selectees. But it has been in the past, it has been in the August Visa Bulletin, which is published in July, which is the one we're about to see, okay? So it could be in either one of those. Could be either, right? Now, do I think there's a chance for a second draw this year? I'm about to answer this question that was asked, where this person says unofficially he's heard there's 125,000 selectees. People giving unofficial numbers don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They have no idea. Nobody has any clue what the number of selectees is for DV26. There's no unofficial data being published. People just make that up. It's just a lie, right? And there are some websites, as I demonstrated over the last couple of weeks, there are some websites that are prepared to sort of pretend they know stuff that they don't know. And they're just fools. They're just idiots trying to convince you that they know something that they don't know. So we don't know how many selectees there are. But I have explained in the past that a second draw is only really going to happen in a year where by September or so, it becomes obvious that the number of selectees chosen in the first draw are not sufficient for some reason, okay? Now, even with the lawsuit, and one of the impacts that is going to happen to DV26 because of the lawsuit, which affects Cuban selectees, even with that, I'm not sure there's going to be a need for a second draw. But we won't know until we know the number of selectees, right? So there may be a second draw that affects South America because of the lawsuit that I've filed recently, because Cubans are included in the winners for DV26 when they should not be included, and so they're going to have to be restricted and they'll be taken out of the pot essentially. And that's not because I've done something wrong. That's just restoring the rules to what the rules said should happen. Cuba was ineligible for DV26. There should be no Cuban winners, but I know there are. What I don't know is how many Cuban winners there are, and how many winners there are in South America, which is why I can't say reliably whether there is going to be a second draw for South America or not. I also don't know whether there's going to be a second draw for the other regions or any other region. Because we don't know the selectee numbers yet, and we won't know them until they're published, okay? Despite what some people would like to pretend. Okay, can you check how many visas are available for Asia region, sir? Plenty. We're not going to hit the cap. We're not. Greetings, Britt. Please, can someone have 2 I-134 forms? Each I-134 form is evaluated based on the income of the person filling out that form. If you've got one person whose income is below the poverty line, then that person is completely useless to you, and that form is completely useless to you. So having a second form because the first one is useless, it doesn't help you. You only need one form from one person who earns enough money to be above the poverty guideline. And I'll tell you, in 2025, if somebody is not earning as much as the poverty guideline, they are not in a position to help anyone. They are, the poverty guideline is pathetically small numbers. So no, if somebody's not able to give you an I-134 with enough income, then a second I-134, probably with not enough income as well, is hopeless. Now you've got 2 useless forms. Keep adding forms. It makes no difference how many forms you add, how many sponsors you add. The only one that you need is the one that earns enough money to support you. And then that one form is all you need. You don't need 2, you don't need 3, you don't need 38. You need one from one person who earns enough money to support you, okay, according to the poverty guideline. Simple as that. Philip, good morning to you. How you doing? I'm sorry about the swearing. I've been swearing today. I apologize to the kids. Sorry, Philip's kids. You should be in bed by now anyway. If AF in general underfilled, does that affect accept countries such as Algeria? Not really. Some of the accept countries are accept countries because they are They get a lot of selectees. They're generally concentrated at one embassy. And there is a sort of chance, although not very likely, but there's sort of a chance that they will hit the 7% cap. You can't, even in an underfilled year, you can't say, oh, well, this country that hit the 7% cap, they would take more. No, you can't do that. The 7% cap is a law. You can't exceed that, right? So probably doesn't really help those countries. Fat Cat, good morning from New York. Just today morning, Mr. Simon. Just reached today morning, Mr. Simon. Hey, Fat Cat. Hi, Simon. Any hope for case number AS148 BMB Embassy? Yep, there's some hope. For someone who is selected for the DV26 lottery and completed the DS260, and who comes from Burundi, is he lucky to get a visa, even if his country on Donald Trump's ban list? If you're banned, you're banned. Okay, that's it. It's not a question of whether you're a nice person, or whether you're very well educated, or whether you know some people in America. The only real exception to someone who is for someone who is banned is if that person can travel on a second passport, a different passport from a different country of a non-banned country. Okay, so you may have been, let's say you've got a Nigerian passport. I'm just saying, I'm just picking it, and I'm picking it for a reason. Let's say you're from Burundi, but you also happen to have a Nigerian passport. Your Nigerian passport didn't qualify you to be in the lottery because Nigeria is excluded, right? But if you won from Burundi, but you have the Nigerian passport as well, you've got a second citizenship, then that can be a way that you can travel, that you can be exempted from the ban. Other than that, there is no other way. People shouldn't be dreaming about national interest exceptions. People shouldn't be dreaming about, I'm a dentist or I'm a doctor and I'm a very nice person, or my friends really like me and I've been studying really hard and I used to go to America. I've been to America 17 times and so they know I'm safe. Forget it. None of that stuff matters, right? What matters is, are you banned or not? And you're not banned if you've got a second passport, and you are banned if you have not got a second passport. That's it. It's as simple as that. Okay, I hate it. I hate this fucking ban. I really do. I hate it. But that's the reality of it. And I don't think it's going to change for a while, right? So right now, if you're banned, you're banned. Please don't underestimate that. Lamine Barry says, hey, Simon, we had our interview on July 8th and we've been placed under 221G. They didn't keep our passports and told us they will contact us once the process is complete. Still any chance? Yes, there's some chance, but I don't know why you were put on 221G, so I can't tell you anything about that, right? You should know why you were put on 221G. They give you some idea, typically. Not always, but they usually do. And you should know. You might be missing a document or, whatever. I don't know what they're looking into. But you know more than I do. And so I can only say, you've got some chance because, yes, 221G cases can be cleared up in time. But I don't know whether yours will or not because I don't know why you're in 221G. Okay. David says, good morning. Hello, Brit Simon. My EU number is current for August, but my case hasn't been scheduled. Possible backlog for my embassy in Warsaw. Let me see. I think there is a very small, very small backlog. Let's see. Yeah, very small. So your EU, let me just check this. Yeah, that very small backlog. So you're probably a case number, I'm guessing, David, you're close to 22,000, very close to 22,000. And I think Warsaw got to about 21,500 or something. And so, yeah, you would then be at the beginning of the next batch. So you'd be in pretty good shape for September. Okay, let me know what your case number is. I could tell you a little bit more precisely what's happened. Hi, Simon. Hope you're well. Fellow Brit here. Good. Regarding the lawsuit you filed, in short, realistically, what are you hoping, likely expecting from the outcome? Are we looking for an outcome this year? Thanks for the question, Ryan. Here's a great question. So here's what's happening. We filed the case, and the case was considered. We filed the case, I think, about June 6th or 7th, right? At some point, it became obvious that we needed to hurry up and file the case. So although it wasn't perfect in terms of the filing, we filed it. It was then served. I got great pictures of the sort of FedEx envelopes going to all the places, including one going to the White House. I love that one. Thank you to Curtis for showing me that. But anyway, it was considered served on, I think it was June 15th. And the government have 2 months to respond, 60 days. So that means that by August 15th, they have to respond. Okay. When they respond, there's only one answer they can give. They can't come back and say, oh, you're wrong. We did this perfectly. Everything's fine here. Nothing to see here. They can't do that. I mean, I know exactly what they've done. What they did was there's a process where they turn on and off the countries that are differences from year to year. In DV25, the only thing they had to do was include the UK, because that was the only country that was made eligible in that year that hadn't previously been eligible. So it was someone's job to go flip a switch on a program somewhere in software, not really a physical switch, but to change a switch that says, yes, include and pick winners from UK. Clearly, they didn't do that. And how do I know they didn't do that? Well, because in DV26, the other thing they were supposed to do was make Cuba ineligible. And I know that switch wasn't touched because I think I've shown my my affidavit. As I've shown, I've got information about Cuban winners from DV26, which means they forgot to turn off that switch in DV26. So basically, the government doesn't know how to work their freaking system, and they don't know to turn on and off these switches when they're supposed to. There's been a change in leadership at KCC, or I don't know how they've managed to screw it up. But that's what they did, right? So by August 15th at the latest, they're going to come back to us saying, you're absolutely right, UK wasn't included. Cuba was included in DV 26, and it shouldn't have been. We've messed up, and here's how we messed up. Okay. So we will win that part of the argument. There's no doubt in my mind that we're going to win that part of the argument. The whole point of the lawsuit, frankly, was because even though I tried to contact the director of KCC, even though I tried to contact the government, even though I FOIA'd the bastards to try and get them to understand what was going on, a lawsuit in the end was the only remaining option to make them aware of how they were screwing this thing up, right? And the lawsuit doesn't benefit me in any way, shape, or form. And I use my daughter's entry as, a figurehead, if you like, for the lawsuit. So, and it's not likely to benefit her. I'm not even sure she would want the green card if she wins. But nevertheless, she was a useful pawn to use in this process. Okay, so August 15th, we're going to get the answer. We're going to find out that we're right. Okay, what then happens? What do we do to remedy this? What available remedies are there? And is there time to save some people for DV25, or can it only be for DV26? Well, I can tell you in previous lawsuits, actions like this, I mentioned the DV 2020 lawsuit earlier in this video. In that lawsuit, we had a judge who made a judgment on September 4th saying, government, you've done wrong, you're going to have to do this. And September 4th and 2020 was a Friday. I remember it clearly because I was camping. And between Friday and the Monday, the government pulled amazing strings. And by Monday and Tuesday of the following week, they were scheduling cases like you wouldn't believe. They are able to turn on the dime if they need to. So it is possible on August 15th, they come back and they say, yes, we've screwed up. We now understand why you've filed this lawsuit, and here's what we're doing to fix this, right? And hopefully the fix is as simple as revealing cases that were numerically sorted in the ordering order. This takes a bit of explanation. The way the lottery works is every entry that's made during the period is jumbled up by a computer and numbered from 1 to whatever number. Let's say there's 1 million entries. They'll be numbered from 1 to 1 million, right? In each region. This happens per region. So in EU, there's going to be 1 to 1 million, and in Africa, there's going to be 1 to 5 million or whatever. there's going to be that number of entries per region, and therefore there's going to be that number of numbers, right? They then take the first, let's say, 100,000 numbers or 50,000 numbers, and those are the winners. But this all happens prior to the announcement of the winning numbers. They then go and disqualify. They focus on that first 50,000 numbers, numerically first 50,000 numbers, and disqualify cases for various reasons. Most of them are disqualified because of photos. Far and away, that's the biggest number of disqualifications. But this, in DV25, they would have disqualified, I believe, hopefully, they've disqualified those cases, because they're from the UK. So DV25 EU case number 7 was from the UK, but because it was from the UK and this stupid switch has not been turned on, that case number is disqualified. If that's the case, if they disqualify cases after they numerically sort them, then the fix for this is as simple as saying, okay, reveal those numbers, reveal those cases, tell us all the cases that are UK cases, send an email to all of those winners and get them processed, get them to submit their DS260s and get them processed and get them scheduled before the end of September. And that's all very possible. That's absolutely possible. However, if those UK cases are disqualified from the draw even before the numbering happens, then we have to have a slightly different solution. In that case, I would say, okay, and hopefully we're in the driving seat by that time because we've got a lawsuit. I'd say, here's what you're going to do, government, because you're probably not bright enough to figure this out, but luckily I've already figured this out for you. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to take those 10,000 entries from the UK or whatever number it is, 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever number it is, and you're going to run a draw process on those. You're going to numerically order them, starting at, I don't care where they start at, 50,000, right? So first case will be 50,001, 50,002, and so on, right? They're going to number all of those. Then they're going to, once they've done that, they'll have assigned the numbers. I'll help them with it if I have to. Jeez. Then they'll do their normal process. They'll knock out some cases, and they'll tell us how many winners there are in that 10,000 entries or whatever number of entries it is, right? Now, those case numbers are going to have stupidly high case numbers, but they can do an accept number range on this. They can control the flow of that and say, okay, we'll make as many people current in that number range. Let's say they have winning numbers from 50,001 to 50,200, right? So there's 200 winning cases in that range, or there's 100 winning cases in that range of 200 numbers. 75% of EU numbers went current for the real range. So we're going to put 75% of these numbers between 50,001 and 50,200. We're going to put 75% of them current in this range. And so if you're in case number 50,001 to 50,150, that's the range of people who are now current. And go ahead. You're then going to email them. You're going to, you'll email all 200 saying you actually were winners. Then you're going to also email them, and you'll do a special process for that group. That's how they'll fix it. One of those two things. Either the numbers are already assigned to those winners and we just have to reveal them, or the numbers are not assigned and we have to do a slightly more complicated thing that mimics the real process and makes as many of those cases current as would have been current if they'd be in the same number range as the rest of the winners. Okay, that's basically it. That's for DV25. For DV26, it's going to be much easier. We're going to win for DV26. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind we're going to win for the DV26. The only risk we've got is that my daughter, who is the lead plaintiff, the named plaintiff in the lawsuit, did not enter DV26. She only entered DV25. And so that's where the information we've got that I've compiled from an online survey where people gave me lots of information, that information will become more important, because in there we have legitimate entries and we can say, well, for the sake of that person and this person and that person, They have been treated badly. They've not been included in the draw. So we want the draw for everybody. Okay. So then we get DV26 winners out of it, and more important, well, just as importantly, we'll have DV27 winners because they'll now remember to operate the bloody system correctly. Because this could have carried on for a long time, right? Because they don't admit when they've done stuff wrong. They don't seem to recognize when they've done stuff wrong. So this was important for that reason too. Okay, Ryan, I hope that explains everything. By all means, ask me questions on britsimonsays.com. If anybody wants to know information on the UK lawsuits, they can ask me. I've had a few people worrying themselves about the outcome of the lawsuit for other countries, other regions in DV26. Will it cause a redraw and all those sort of things? Look, I'm not in charge of this process, but I've just explained, probably more clearly than I've explained before, how I know this can be operated without an impact to any other countries. It doesn't mean I will have exactly what I want from this lawsuit. And so could it cause damage? Yes, it could cause damage. I'm not going to say it doesn't. But people that have been wronged have the right to seek relief. And, that's the way it is. People from Cuba that are DV26 winners are already travel banned. But this lawsuit will guarantee that they can't go any further. And so some people from Cuba might be mad at me, but you were not eligible for DV26. It was in the rules. You weren't eligible. You shouldn't have entered. And the fact that you entered and then got selected is, a mistake. And the mistake has to be corrected. It's not my fault that I've pointed out that mistake, right? Is just the way it is. And so you can't pretend that you are ever going to be correctly treated, by this. If they'd have issued visas to those DV26 Cuban selectees, that would have been a mistake, and I don't think they could do that. I actually think they would have stopped themselves in time, but I can't be sure of that. Okay, so there you go. A couple more questions. I'm already over an hour here, so let's just do a couple more questions. May I provide a certified copy of my educational documents for DV lottery requirements? I've lost the original document and the school is currently closed. Yeah, you can do that. In a lot of countries, the schools register the results at some central authority that then can provide information. That's how it worked in my country. Perhaps it works the same way in your country. So yes, you can do that. This sort of makes me think of an important reminder. When you're going for interview, you should have copies. It doesn't have to be certified copies, but copies of documents that you want to keep. If you've got your birth certificate and your marriage certificate and your passport and everything else, you have to show those documents, right? But what I would do if I were you is show your original documents and hand over a copy of that document, because otherwise they will take the original document and you'll never get that back. That will be kept by the US government, right? So if you care about getting your documents back, take a photocopy of that document, okay? Okay, let me look for a couple of interesting questions and we'll call it a day. Any idea of the Oceania visa bulletin for DV Lottery 26 interview schedules, case numbers below 1500? I don't know what that means, Jenny. At first glance, an OC 1500 number seems like a safe number in these years, although there were years where my calculated numbers were coming out for Oceania were as accurate as saying, I think we're going to see current to about 1450. And one year, I think I said 1450, it came out at 1490 or something like that. So 1500 is generally in the right range, but I can't be exact. I can't be precise, and I don't know the number of selectees. So when we know the number of selectees, we'll be able to get a better idea. Okay. Okay. Let's see. David says it's irrelevant to predict cutoffs of 2026 because there were no visa bulletins for that fiscal year released yet, so we don't know how it will progress. Yeah, we don't know that. We don't know the impact of the travel bans. We don't know whether the travel bans will continue or not. We don't know the number of selectees. We don't know how embassies are going to be performing. We don't know if there's going to be COVID-25. We don't know anything, right? So yeah, it's kind of crazy to predict with any sense of certainty that you seem to know what's going to happen in 2026. Although I can show you to a website that says stupid shit like Oceania in South America will definitely be current because they're always current, right? Even though they're not always current. But, you know, you can find people that will say stupid shit if you want that. My DV25 case number is under 8,000, but I submitted my DS260 late in mid-May 25, and it is still at KCC. May I ask you, is there anything I can do to fasten its processing? No, there isn't. There's nothing you can do to fasten the processing. The only thing you could have done was submit it before DV26 cases came along and swamped that system. If you'd have submitted in the first few days of May, you'd have been much better off than mid-May. But nothing you can do about that now. There is no special button you can press or email you can send, or, you know, there's nothing you can do to make that faster. You made your decision, and now you have to live with the consequences. The only other thing that you can hope for is that your embassy may take. So what's likely to happen is we're likely to see the visa bulletin issued tomorrow or Tuesday, right? That's most likely. It could come later than that, but it's most likely tomorrow or Tuesday. Once we see that issued, within literally the same day, probably, we will start to see interview schedules coming out, 2NLs coming out, for embassies that start with the letter A and B, right? It works that way. It's just they go alphabetically. It's a bit weird, but they kind of go alphabetically. Now, it's not 100% guaranteed. That's the only way, you know. They could start with Warsaw, but they're not very likely to. It's usually starting with the A's, B's, C's. And because of the slightly, you know, I don't want to say late, but later release of the VB, KCC already know the numbers. They're already scheduling, right? So as soon as the VB comes out, literally within an hour or two, we're going to start seeing the first 2NLs. There's going to be no time lost, right? So so we will see the A's, B's, C's come out probably the first day, maybe second day or something. We'll see that. So by Monday or Tuesday, we'll have those. So let's say you're in an A or B embassy. That means you really should have had your DS260 processed a few days ago because they've already decided who is going to be scheduled for interview. They already know. They've already put those schedules together, right? Because they know the numbers that we're about to see. At KCC, they already know the numbers. How do I know that? Because I used to phone them every month, you know, and I would get the visa bulletin numbers before they were released publicly. So I know the ladies at KCC get the numbers early and they start their work early. And you all know that because if you pay attention, you'll see that you know, as soon as we get the visa bulletin in some months, within an hour or 2 hours, we start to see 2NLs. They don't just suddenly arrange those in that 1 hour period, 2 hour period, and start sending the 2NLs. They were done already, right? It's obvious, right? It should be freaking obvious to anyone with a brain. They have already scheduled those interviews. So if you're still under processing, you have already missed the first boat. For certain embassies, at least for A's and B's and C embassies, right? Now, what you're then going to have to hope for is that your DS260 will be processed, let's say, next week or week after next or whatever, and your embassy agree to take a second batch of schedules, right, of 2NLs. It's risky, but that's going to be the only remaining hope you have. So unfortunately, we can't be certain that won't, you know, that will or won't happen. You just have to wait and see, and then you're going to be on tenterhooks, unfortunately, until probably you know, first week or so of August, and they could, you know, schedule DV25 cases as late as then. Because they're undershooting so badly, I do expect we're going to see that sort of activity. We'll be seeing embassies taking second batches and that sort of thing because KCC will be saying, hey, we got visas left over. If you've got any more space, they will literally be saying that to the embassies. They're going to be saying, we've got visas going to be left over. If you've got more space and you want to take some more DV25 cases, you can take some. Just let us know how many. And so an embassy will respond, say, yeah, we can take 20 more. 20 more in September. We can take 10 more. We can take 50 more, whatever. So there will be second batches, in my opinion. It does happen, particularly in years where they're obviously going to underfill. And that's where we're at. We're in one of those years. So, yeah, you've got a chance, but that's the only thing you can hope for now. Okay? Raided by CCP Sammy. What a moron. Let me just, where's my delete? Put user, delete comment, ban user and delete their comments. There you go. That's the moron. Right. Okay. Let me scan down, looking for one more. Okay. I answered a question about this sort of fairly similar earlier, but this is a worthwhile question. So if you are travel banned, in this case, it's about the Congolese people of Brazzaville. If you're under a travel ban, what do you do, right? Now, KCC will schedule your case for interview. They won't ask you whether you want to go to interview or not. They will schedule it, right? Just because they schedule it doesn't mean that you can be given an exception. They are not saying to you, by scheduling your interview, they are not saying, hey, you should come for an interview because we're going to give you a national interest exception, or we think you're really nice and your education is really good and you used to work for a company, we like that company, or you're a dentist, or, and we really need dentists. They're not thinking those things at all. They are simply following the process like a robot. Your DS-260 was submitted, your number is current, your DS-260 was processed, you're going to get scheduled. The fact that you're under travel ban doesn't mean a damn thing to them. KCC will schedule you anyway, right? So then you have to decide, do you want to go to that interview or not? If you go to that interview and you don't have a second passport, you're going to be banned. You won't be given a visa. They'll actually refuse you permanently. Now, it doesn't mean that you're refused for future years. It means that this year you're not going to have a chance, right? So and that would have cost you medical fees, and it would have cost you the interview fee and so on. If it were my choice, I wouldn't go for the interview, right? Unless I have a second passport. But some of you don't believe me when I say those things, that you will be banned. You believe someone has told you, don't worry, my brother-in-law is a very smart lawyer, and he says he knows someone who is given a national interest exception, and he can do that, and you just have to pay him $500 and he'll get you sorted out. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. You're not getting a visa. You're banned. They wanted to ban you. They don't care if you're a nice person or well-educated or work for a charity or used to work with the US government, or they don't care. They banned you. And they meant to ban you. They're shitty people. And they meant to ban nice people for whatever reason. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but they did that. And now you just have to sort of decide how you operate. And so if I were you, I wouldn't go to the interview. I wouldn't waste my medical money. I wouldn't waste the interview money, because it will be a waste of time unless you have a second passport. That's the only possible exception that will work. Okay. I'm trying to be a bit brutal, a bit blunt, because I don't want people to waste their money, right? So there may be a legitimate lawyer out there, and I underscore the word legitimate, who really understands this process, and they think they can do something or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just trying to be blunt with you so that you don't waste your money. I don't think you should spend any more money on that. Okay? All right, everybody. We'll call that a day. Good luck to those that are still waiting for this final visa bulletin. I'm hopeful we see a Hail Mary. I'm hopeful that we'll get some of you through that really want this opportunity. Fingers crossed for as many as possible to get through. But it's a brutal process. It's a tough process. So some will not make it through. And that's going to be sad and unfortunate. That's just the way it works. But fingers crossed for a good final visa bulletin and a good result on scheduling. All right. Okay, everybody. Have a good day now. Bye-bye.